Right then, everybody, welcome back. The dust has settled on Manchester United's season. It wasn't great, but it was progress in certain areas. So this is what we do on a Monday, isn't it? Let's have a look. 5 things that we learned about Manchester United this season. In number 1, then, progress. But how much? So, of course, I believe there was progress. You can argue and say that you don't believe there was. Fine. But I believe that there was progress, and United did finish in second place. And I've seen a million different arguments that 74 points in recent seasons would have been third, fifth, sixth in recent years. So it doesn't necessarily do anyone any benefit to compare points across multiple seasons. The points are relevant to the season that you play in. If you can win the league with 50 points, you still win the league. There's no asterisk like, oh, it was the lowest points total ever. Look, under Jose Mourinho, United came second, 19 points off top, with a higher points total than we achieved during the treble season. Are you prepared to argue that season, Jose's second season, was better than the treble season? I don't think so, right? So it's all relative. If you win the league, and honestly, who gives a toss how many points? Winning the league is what you have to do, and United's points total was more. It was 12 more than we did last season. And I don't care about the inconsistencies of other teams. I don't care about the challenges of other teams. I don't think it matters. No one's ever given us credit for anything that we've done when, someone else has won something ahead of us and not took into account some of the circumstances we found ourselves in for second. If you win, you win. So congratulations to Manchester City for winning. They put together an unbelievable run in the middle of the season. We put more points on the board than we did last year. We finished higher than we did last year. That is tangible progress. We also scored 7 more goals this season than last, with 73. It's the most goals we've scored in the league since Sir Alex Ferguson's last season. It's the second time that we've finished inside the top 4 consecutively since Sir Alex Ferguson was last at the club. We did go backwards a little bit in conceding more goals. We conceded 8 more goals in the league. But we also reached the European final. We did kind of put aside that semi-final curse, if you want to call it that, to a certain degree. And I'm happy to call this season progress. I'm also happy to say I want more. I'm not happy coming second. I want Manchester United to come first. I want to see Manchester United be ambitious enough to come first. And there's a lot of things go into this. And I'm going to get to something a little bit later on, talking about how what Chelsea have done in 6 months is such a non-argument, but we will get to that. Number 2, Greenwood's elevation. On the 28th of October 2020, Greenwood scored his first career Champions League goal when we beat RB Leipzig 5-0. And it came from his first ever shot in the competition. On the 11th of May 2021, he scored in a Premier League game against Leicester City, assisted by Diallo in a 2-1 defeat. That goal was the first time in 15 years that a teenager assisted another teenager for a Premier League goal, which is a kind of funky stat. Since the start of last season, Greenwood has scored more Premier League goals as a teenager than any other player in European top 5 leagues, and his 15 goals have taken him level with Rooney for the most goals scored in the competition by a Manchester United teenager. Some lofty peers that he's sitting around here as well. And he also managed to score 12 goals this season, which is 5 less than he scored last season. But eye test wise, I think it's safe to say he did go for a bit of a lull in the middle of the season, but he started to finish the season really strong. And I think that some credit has to go to both Mason and to Solskjaer for how they've managed. Statistically, he regressed, but I think on the pitch he actually progressed. I think as a player, he's adding some confidence to his play. Not that he was ever short on confidence, but I think he's added some confidence. I think there's been an improvement in his decision making. And I think finishing the season strong, getting included into the provisional squad for England for the Euros, those are massive things for him. And I think this relationship that's going on with Cavani can only be a good thing for him. And regardless of whoever comes in on the right, yes, they'll probably take a few starts off him, undoubtedly. But I think you'll also see him favoured more and given more 90s down the middle. And that is where he will really learn to ply his trade, because he is going to end up as a striker. You just don't see many teenage strikers playing, certainly the sort of role that Mason's got as well, where you would expect him to become a creator as well as a goal scorer. Those are the sorts of things that I expect him to be improving upon. Those are the sorts of things that I think he can work on during games while on the pitch. And those are the sort of things that just take time to develop as a footballer. So those are the things I'm really looking forward to seeing from Mason. I wouldn't say it's a waste of time playing him on the right-hand side. I think you definitely get a benefit to him being played on the right-hand side, but you're going to get more benefit out of seeing him develop as the number 9 that I think we all hope he can go on and be. Number 3, UEFA Super League proposal. So in April 2021, we saw a proposal that could have completely reformed or destroyed the entire landscape of both European football and football in England. And we had potentially devastating collateral damage on non-elite football, championship down to grassroots. And it could have been devastating for everybody besides the 12 clubs that were involved. 12 clubs that formally announced that they will be forming the Super League to start in August this year. And in response, FIFA and all 6 continental federations, including UEFA, rejected the formation of the breakaway league. It got widespread condemnation by broadcasters, by fans, by everybody involved, really, except those 6. There was resignations amongst some of those clubs. I don't even think we've seen the full fallout of this yet. I think there's more for this to come. There's still talk of some of the clubs. I think Real Madrid, Juventus and Barcelona still could be facing bans. The 6 English clubs withdrew after they saw the backlash coming in, but those 3 I just mentioned, Juventus, Barcelona, Real Madrid, they seem to stick to their guns. Florentino Perez especially come out with some of the best one-liners that we've seen this year. Sensational stuff. I don't think it's dead yet. I think he's shelved it, and that's why I think that further reform is required. I think that's why independent football regulators, certainly in this country at least, is something that is required, something that we can't give up the fight on. And all of these sorts of things have to be there to protect fans as we go forward and protect the game from itself, because ultimately these 6 executives prior to the European Super League proposal, they also come up with Project Big Picture, which was an absolute money grab. What they proposed was more money to filter down to the bottom half of the pyramid, and that was bribery. They basically said, we'll give you more money, knowing the desperation of some of the clubs in the Championship, League 1, League 2. The desperation that those have got for revenue would mean that they'll probably sign up to whatever shit idea they put in front of them. And actually, some people are outspoken. The chairman at Accrington Stanley, I think he's called Andy, very vocal on Twitter. He's a good follow, actually. He was very actively against this. But there was some that was definitely signing up because they just pure and simple were going out of business and they needed the cash revenues. What that would have done, the Project Big Picture, if it had gone through, it would have allowed the Big 6, the 6 that decided that they were bouncing from the league, by the way, it would have allowed those 6 carte blanche to decide anything for English football. Now, considering this 6 decided to try and go and do the Super League breakaway, think how bad Project Big Picture would have been. We all saw it when it came up and was like, this is a bad idea, because if these lot decide to do something really rum, the rest of English footballers just agreed to it because this Big 6 get like extra voting rights on top of what everybody else would have got. They could have allowed anything that they got together in their little sneaky parties and come up with. And that was exactly what happened with the European Super League. So thankfully, Project Big Picture got shut down because it was a terrible idea. But also, it was a good thing that the European Super League got shut down because that was an equally shit idea. And I don't think they're done with shit ideas yet. I think there's many, many more shit ideas to come down the pipe. Number 4, the Glazer Backlash. So, upon the knowledge that the Glazers were massively involved in both of these shit ideas that came up, the proposal of the Super League, it tipped a lot of United fans over the edge. And it was good to see, I'm going to be honest with you. 15 years of frustration at how we've been run. Not, as some people like Graham Souness said, it's because we're not winning anymore. Listen, mate, on the back of winning 3 titles in a row and in the middle of being in 3 Champions League finals, Manchester United fans were protesting. We were protesting in 2005 The protest for some of us hasn't stopped since 2005. So this is nothing to do with United being poor on the pitch. For the vast majority of us, I'm sure some people have jumped on it because United are poor on the pitch. That is no doubt in my mind. But for the vast majority of us, this has been an ongoing protest for 16 years. So it's ridiculous to come out and say that. Manchester United fans want a say in our club. If not for some quite fortunate events that happened in football and economically across the world in the last 16 years, Manchester United could have done what happened to Leeds, and we could have found ourselves in League One, fire sales, sell the stadium, all the rest of that sort of stuff, just for the mismanagement of the owners at the top. Now, in the middle of that protest, there was around 20 or so supporters gained access to the training ground, staged a protest against the Glazer ownership. A couple of days later, there was a protest outside Old Trafford, which saw several thousand protesting against the Glazer ownership and advocating for the 50+1 rule as seen in German football. Joel Glazer signed a letter, let's say he apologised. He signed a letter apologising, saying that he got it wrong. Fans remained enraged, and I think everything that needed to be said at the time has been said, and it was correct. He was confronted by Sally Lockwood outside his home in Palm Beach in Florida. More protests happened. Protest outside the Old Trafford and outside the Lowry Hotel where the team was staying. Managed to get the Premier League fixture against Liverpool postponed. Some fans were able to get onto the pitch, resulting in the delay before kickoff, before the eventual decision to postpone the fixture happened. It was the first time in Premier League history that a match has been abandoned due to a protest. Those sorts of things made people sit up and take notice. Here's the thing. All protests are called the women's suffrage movement, which originated in Manchester with Emmeline Pankhurst. Those ladies were called terrorists at the time by the press. So be very careful about what you label people and protests, because protests happen because people aren't happy with the status quo. And the status quo is happy with the status quo because it is the status quo. The establishment likes what's happening because it's the establishment. Usually when there's protests, it's because people are upset with something and want to change whatever they are upset about. No protest worth a wank ever did so 100% peacefully. No protest was ever successful without maybe going close to and sometimes stepping over the line. If you feel the need to protest, you do so with everything you can. Simple as that. It's the only way to enact change. And finally, so close, yet so far. Runners-up in the league. Runners-up in the Europa League. Could have been a lot different and better in the Champions League as well. We had an excellent opportunity and couldn't do the simple task of dealing with Istanbul Başakşehir. When it's all said and done, it is another season without silverware. But we are in the midst of a great reset and a big retooling of the squad. Money's been spent, but it's less about the money for me and more about the number of first-team players that have been brought in. So we saw a Champions League final played out this weekend between Manchester City and Chelsea. I've seen people talking about bringing Tuchel in and getting rid of a club legend, and Tuchel has spent nothing and won the Champions League in 6 months. Now, Tuchel's a very good coach. You saw when he came in, he did have a bit of an immediate impact in terms of he made them very resilient. The clean sheet numbers against was sensationally good. But the reason Frank Lampard went, and the reason that I thought he was going to go and had to go, was because he was underperforming with the squad at his disposal. Chelsea outspent the rest of Europe. Do you know who was second to Chelsea in spend last year? Manchester City. Is it a coincidence those are the two teams in the Champions League final? Now, I've seen people trying to compare United's 11 to Chelsea's 11. I think United are stronger in a couple of areas, and I think Chelsea are stronger in several areas. The one area that Chelsea embarrass United is depth. When they've got the likes of Kovacic and Havertz and Mount and Ziyech, don't all have to start. Hudson-Odoi. You can't tell me these players wouldn't come in and start for Manchester United, let alone the likes of Kante. So I think the starting 11s aren't far off. I think they're probably quite similar. And it would rock back and forward between United are probably better and they're probably better. But the depth of experience and talent in their squad is incomparable to Manchester United. Same with Manchester City. And in a season where you've seen this Manchester City side have a couple of standout performers, Phil Foden has really come to the fore. Phil Foden didn't get rinsed and ground into the ground last year, and then same again this year. He's played about half the games. Last year he played about 4. This is a player that's literally fresh. And I think freshness is something that people aren't really taking into account, and I honestly think they should. The depth of the squad, when you consider the amount of travel and the amount of games that need playing under COVID restrictions for the most part this year as well, I don't think we're fully paying attention to how much of an issue that is. Now, I think Solskjaer wanted to play more players, and I think he probably should have played Donny van de Beek more. I think he could have used Juan Mata more, and I think he could have used Axel a bit more. And then there'd have been less reluctance from Ole as the season comes to a close to throw those players in and give someone a night off when they desperately, desperately need it. That's one thing that I can absolutely lay at the blame of Ole. Another is how poor we've been at set pieces. Those are things that the manager controls. Things that a manager can't necessarily control. The depth of the squad. Ole's going to want 50 players. Every manager wants as many as they can have. They're constrained by whatever the board allows them to do. Pep Guardiola has spent $834 million in 5 years on a squad that already had Vincent Kompany, Yaya Toure, Kevin De Bruyne, Raheem Sterling, David Silva, Sergio Aguero. World-class players. That's just world-class players that I've read out. On top of that, he added 25 first-team players at a cost of nearly $800 million. What has he achieved that Pellegrini didn't achieve? Because Pellegrini got to this level. He won a League Cup and a league in the same season. I think he got to a semi-final too. So he went one game further with 25 players and 800 million spent. Why aren't people prepared to talk about the impact? This is supposedly the best manager in the world. For me, I think he is a very good manager. And I think there's a lot that all of us could learn listening to Pep Guardiola about football and footballing philosophies. But I also think he wants to express his genius in a final and show his genius in a final rather than keeping it simple. That phrase that the UFC love, do what got you to the dance. Manchester City, if they just turn up and play their regular game, win that cup final 9 times out of 10. By not playing a striker, by not playing a defensive midfielder, Pep Guardiola actually cost City that. And apparently, I haven't seen it. Jay was telling me this morning, Stu Brennan, who writes for the MEN is like a Manchester City fanzine, it's a joke, was saying that Pep needs investment. The most expensively assembled squad of all time. The thing with Manchester City as well is not only is it the most expensively assembled squad of all time, all those players are still there. Manchester United have spent a frankly ridiculous amount of money since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. But most of that spend is not here. We spent big on Schneidlin and Memphis and Di Maria and Ander Herrera and Lukaku and people like this. They're not at this football club. Most of the money Manchester United have spent is not on the pitch. So when people talk about Manchester United spent like 700 million, well, in half that time, City have spent 800 million to do what Pellegrini did. Pellegrini wasn't good enough for West Ham. Keith Moyes was coming and showing him how to do that job. It's a funny old game, innit? And I'm not saying this means Pep's shit. He's obviously not shit. But I do think he overcomplicates things when it comes to the really big games rather than getting out of his own way and just letting his team play football because it's a fucking hell of a football team. But congratulations to Chelsea. Not going to lie. I didn't watch the game. Not live anyway. I have watched it since. Because I really didn't want to watch City winning it. And I tried to stay out of it, but I was getting texts off everyone. Texts off my dad saying, fucking hell, could have scored those chances Werner's just missed. Well, that's 5 things we learned about this season. What 5 things are you looking forward to next season? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe. See you in a bit.